Marcus Webb pushed his cleaning cart down the dim corridors of Nexus 7's waste management sector, the third level below the main commercial district. It was 3 a.m. station time, and the usual hum of alien voices and trading had quieted to almost nothing. This was his favorite shift. No crowds, no one looking through him like he was invisible. Just Marcus, his mop, and the endless metal hallways that needed cleaning. He had worked as a janitor on the station for 8 years now. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to send money back to his sister on Earth, and he got to see aliens from across the galaxy every day, even if most of them never noticed him. Tonight, Marcus was cleaning near the trash compactors when he heard it, a small wounded sound like a kitten mewing. He stopped pushing his cart and listened. There was again, coming from inside Compactor 7. That's weird, Marcus muttered to himself. The compactors were supposed to be locked and automated. Nothing living should be in there. He approached carefully and used his maintenance key to override the lock. The heavy door hissed open, and the smell hit him first. Rotting garbage mixed with something else, something metallic like blood. Marcus pulled out his flashlight and shone inside. At first, he saw only bags of waste and discarded containers. Then something moved in the corner, something small and dark. His heart jumped. Nestled between 2 garbage bags was a creature about the size of a house cat. It had scales that might have been beautiful once, but were now dull and cracked. Small wings hung limp at its sides, and a long tail curled around its body. The creature looked up at Marcus with eyes that glowed faintly orange in the darkness, and he recognized what it was immediately: a draconian hatchling, a baby dragon. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. Draconians were legendary across the galaxy, powerful, dangerous, and fiercely protective of their young. They ruled an empire that spanned dozens of star systems, and they rarely had anything to do with humans or other lesser species. As some called them, what was a draconian hatchling doing alone in a trash compactor? The little dragon made that sound again, weaker this time. Marcus could see wounds on its body, and one of its wings looked broken. It was dying. Every logical part of Marcus's brain told him to walk away. Call station security. Let them handle it. Getting involved with a draconian, even a baby one, could be dangerous. Their species was notoriously aggressive, and if anyone thought he had hurt this creature, the consequences would be severe. But Marcus couldn't walk away. He had never been able to walk away from suffering, whether it was a stray dog on Earth or an alien creature in a trash compactor on a space station. It wasn't in his nature. "Hey there, little one," Marcus said softly, kneeling down. "You're in bad shape, aren't you?" The hatchling watched him with those intelligent, fearful eyes. It tried to bare its tiny fangs, but the gesture was weak, more desperate than threatening. Marcus slowly reached out his hand, moving carefully. "I'm not going to hurt you. I promise." The dragon didn't move away. Maybe it was too weak, or maybe it somehow understood that Marcus meant no harm. He gently lifted the small creature, surprised by how light it was. The hatchling should have weighed more. It was clearly starving. Marcus looked around quickly. He couldn't take the dragon through the main corridors. Too many security cameras. Too many questions. But he knew these lower levels better than anyone. There was an old storage room nearby that hadn't been used in months. He carried the hatchling carefully, keeping it hidden under his maintenance jacket. The creature was warm against his chest, its breathing rapid and shallow. They reached the storage room, and Marcus used his key to get inside. It was dusty and filled with old equipment, but it was safe and private. He set the dragon down gently on a clean tarp and examined its injuries. The broken wing was the worst of it, but there were also several deep cuts on its scales, like someone had deliberately hurt it. Marcus's jaw tightened with anger. "Who would do this to you?" he whispered. The hatchling looked up at him and made a small chirping sound. It was definitely hungry. Marcus pulled out his lunchbox, a simple meal of protein bars, a sandwich, and a bottle of water he had brought from his quarters. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. He broke off a piece of the protein bar and offered it to the dragon. The hatchling sniffed it cautiously, then devoured it in seconds. Marcus smiled and gave it more, then poured water into his cupped hand. The dragon drank desperately. "There you go," Marcus said gently. You're going to be okay. I'll figure something out. He spent the next hour cleaning the dragon's wounds with supplies from a first aid kit, fashioning a small splint for its wing, and making it comfortable. The hatchling watched him the entire time, those orange eyes growing brighter and more alert as it realized it was safe. Finally, exhausted, Marcus sat back against the wall. The dragon curled up near his leg, making a soft purring sound. "I'll come back tomorrow," Marcus promised, stroking the creature's head gently. "With more food, we'll get you strong again." He had no idea that tomorrow everything would change. Marcus woke up to the sound of alarms blaring through his small quarters. Red emergency lights flashed across his walls, and the station's automated voice echoed through the speakers. "All personnel remain in your quarters. This is a Priority 1 lockdown. Repeat, all personnel remain in your quarters." Marcus sat up quickly, his heart racing. In 8 years on Nexus 7, he had never heard a Priority 1 lockdown. Those were reserved for only the most serious threats: terrorist attacks, hull breaches, or war. He rushed to his window and looked out at the docking bay. What he saw made his blood run cold. A massive warship floated outside the station, so large it blocked out the stars. It was like nothing Marcus had ever seen, black metal covered in glowing red patterns, with enormous wings that looked organic rather than mechanical. The ship was shaped like a dragon in flight, and it radiated pure power. A Draconian Imperial warship. Marcus's stomach dropped as he remembered the hatchling he had hidden in the storage room. No, he thought, this can't be related. Can it? His communicator buzzed urgently. It was his supervisor. "Marcus, what the hell did you do?" The man shouted to the device. "What? I didn't do anything. The Draconians are here. Their emperor is demanding access to the station. They're saying someone kidnapped a member of the royal family." Marcus felt the room spin around him. Royal family. The little dragon he had saved was royalty. "I didn't kidnap anyone," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I found—" "Save it for security. They're coming for you. The station cameras caught you entering restricted areas last night. You're the only human who went near the waste sectors." The communication cut off. Marcus stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. He had only tried to help. He had saved the hatchling's life. But who would believe him? To everyone else, it would look like he had kidnapped a Draconian prince. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside his door. Marcus barely had time to pull on his shirt before the door exploded inward. 3 station security guards rushed in, followed by 2 massive creatures that made Marcus step back in fear. Draconian warriors. They stood over 8 feet tall, covered in dark red scales, with eyes that glowed like burning coals. They wore armor that seemed to be made of the same black metal as their ship, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. "Marcus Webb," one of the security guards said nervously, "you're under arrest for suspected kidnapping of Prince Ashkren of the Draconian Imperial family." "I didn't kidnap him," Marcus said, raising his hands. "I saved him. He was dying in a trash compactor." One of the Draconian warriors stepped forward and grabbed Marcus by the shoulder. Its grip was like iron, and Marcus could feel the heat radiating from its scales. "You will come with us. The Emperor demands to see you immediately." They dragged Marcus through the corridors of the station. Everywhere he looked, aliens pressed themselves against the walls, watching in fear and fascination. Word spread quickly. A human janitor had somehow gotten involved with the Draconian Empire. They brought him to the Grand Hall, the largest room on the station, where important diplomatic meetings were held. The room was packed with alien dignitaries, station officials, and Draconian guards. Everyone fell silent as Marcus was pushed into the center of the room. At the far end of the hall, sitting on what could only be described as a throne, was the Dragon Emperor himself. Volcranos was enormous, at least 12 feet tall even while sitting. His scales were black as obsidian and seemed to absorb the light around him. Massive horns curved back from his head, and wings that could have wrapped around a small spaceship were folded at his back. But it was his eyes that truly terrified Marcus. They glowed molten gold, and when they locked onto him, Marcus felt like his soul was being examined. The temperature in the room rose noticeably. The Emperor radiated heat and power like a star. "This is a human?" Volcronos' voice was deep and resonated through the entire hall. It wasn't just sound. Marcus could feel it in his chest, in his bones. "Yes, Your Imperial Majesty," a station official said, bowing so low his head nearly touched the floor. "This is Marcus Webb. He was seen on camera entering the restricted way sector, where we believe your grandson was." "Silence," the Emperor said quietly, but the word carried absolute authority. Everyone in the room stopped breathing. Volcronos rose from his throne and walked toward Marcus. Each step shook the floor. The Draconian warriors forced Marcus to his knees, and he found himself staring at the Emperor's clawed feet. "Look at me, human." Marcus slowly raised his head. The Emperor's eyes burned into him, and Marcus felt something strange, like fingers gently touching his mind, searching through his memories. "Where is my grandson?" Volcronos asked, and beneath the authority in his voice, Marcus heard something else. Fear, desperation, love. This wasn't just an emperor. This was a grandfather looking for his lost child. "I can take you to him," Marcus said, his voice shaking but honest. "He's hurt, but he's alive. I've been taking care of him." The room erupted in whispers. The Emperor raised one clawed hand, and silence fell again. "Then take me to him. Now." "And human." The Emperor leaned down, his massive face inches from Marcus's. "If you have harmed one scale on his body, I will turn this station into ash. Do you understand?" Marcus met the Emperor's eyes and nodded. "I understand, but I promise you, I only try to help him." "We shall see," Volcronos said. "Lead the way." Marcus led the way through the station's lower corridors with shaking legs. Behind him walked the Dragon Emperor, surrounded by his warriors and dozens of nervous station officials. The group moved in tense silence, and Marcus could feel the Emperor's burning gaze on his back with every step. They reached the old storage room, and Marcus's hand trembled as he unlocked the door. Please be okay, he thought, remembering the small, wounded creature he had left there. Please still be alive. The door opened, and Marcus stepped inside. The room was dark except for the emergency lighting. For a moment, he couldn't see anything, and panic gripped his heart. Then he heard it, that same soft chirping sound from last night. "Little one," Marcus called gently. "It's me. I brought someone to see you." A small shape moved in the shadows. The hatchling emerged slowly, limping on 3 legs with a splinted wing held carefully against its body. Its scales looked slightly brighter than yesterday, and its orange eyes glowed with more life. The dragon saw Marcus and made a happy chirping sound, moving toward him. Then it saw the Emperor. The hatchling froze, and for a moment, Marcus thought it might run. But then something amazing happened. The little dragon's eyes went wide, and it let out a cry that sounded like pure joy. It ran. Well, hobbled quickly, past Marcus straight toward the massive figure in the doorway. "Ashkren," the Emperor whispered, and his voice cracked with emotion. Volcronos dropped his knees, which still put him far above Marcus's height, and opened his arms. The hatchling jumped into them, chirping and purring and nuzzling against the Emperor's chest. The massive dragon wrapped his clawed hands gently around the small creature, holding him like the most precious thing in the universe. "My grandson," Volcronos said, and Marcus saw something impossible, tears running down the Emperor's scaled face. "I thought I had lost you forever." Marcus stood back, watching the reunion with his own eyes wet. Whatever happened to him now didn't matter. The little dragon was safe with his family. But then something unexpected happened. The hatchling pulled away from his grandfather and turned back to Marcus. It chirped urgently and hobbled back, pressing itself against Marcus's leg. The little dragon looked up at him with those intelligent eyes and purred. The Emperor stared at this scene, his expression unreadable. The station officials behind him whispered nervously. "Ashkren trusts you," Volcronos said slowly. "He shows you affection. This is unusual." Marcus knelt down and gently stroked the hatchling's head. "I just fed him and bandaged his wounds. Anyone would have done the same." "No," the Emperor said firmly. "Not anyone. Most would have feared him. Others would have seen opportunity for ransom or political gain. Some would have let him die rather than risk involvement with my kind." He stood slowly. but you simply helped him because he was suffering. Volcrano stepped closer, and Marcus forced himself not to back away. The Emperor reached out one massive clawed hand, and Marcus flinched, but the hand stopped just above his head. Marcus felt that strange mental touch again, stronger this time, like warm light flooding through his mind. The Emperor was seeing his memories. Marcus felt it all replay, finding Ashkren in the trash compactor, deciding to help despite his fears, sharing his own food, carefully treating the wounds, promising to return. Every moment, every thought, every feeling. Then Volcranos withdrew his hand and stepped back. His expression had changed completely. The rage and suspicion were gone, replaced by something Marcus couldn't quite identify. "I see the truth now," the Emperor announced to everyone in the room. "This human found my grandson dying, abandoned like garbage. He risked his job, his safety, and possibly his life to save a creature he had every reason to fear." Volcranos' voice grew louder. "While I commanded fleets to search the galaxy, while I threatened entire systems for information, this simple janitor did what none of my warriors could do. He saved the heir to my empire." The station officials looked stunned. The Draconian warriors bowed their heads in respect. "Your Majesty," one of the officials stammered, "we had no idea. We thought—" "You thought he was a criminal," Volcrano said coldly. "Perhaps you should think more carefully before making such judgments." He turned back to Marcus. "You wish to know what happened to my grandson?" Marcus nodded, still processing everything. 3 days ago, Ashkren was kidnapped from the Imperial Palace by rivals within my own court. They wanted to eliminate the heir and throw my empire into chaos. They brought him here and dumped him in that compactor to die, make it appear like an accident during transport. The Emperor's eyes blazed with fury at the memory. They nearly succeeded. "I'm so sorry," Marcus said quietly. "No child deserves that." "No, they do not." Volcranos looked down at his grandson, still pressed against Marcus's leg. "My people have been searching desperately. Every resource, every agent, every sensor. But this station is massive, and we could not locate him before—" He paused. "Before it would have been too late. Even now, with the bond between us, I could barely sense him. He was too weak." The Emperor placed his hand on Marcus's shoulder, gentler this time. "You gave him food when you had little. You gave him care when you could have walked away. You gave him life when others had sentenced him to death." Volcranos' voice grew formal. "Marcus Webb of Earth, the Draconian Empire owes you a life debt, the highest honor we can bestow. You have saved not just a child, but the future of our people." Marcus looked at the Emperor, then down at little Ashkren, who chirped happily and licked his hand with a small forked tongue. "I didn't do it for a reward," Marcus said honestly. "I did it because it was right." Volcranos smiled, a strange expression on his fierce face. "I know. That is precisely why the debt is so great." The grand hall buzzed with excited whispers as everyone returned from the storage room. Marcus stood uncomfortably in the center, while Ashkren refused to leave his side, sitting on his feet like a loyal pet. The little dragon purred contentedly, apparently unaware of the massive political event happening around him. Emperor Volcranos raised his hand, and instant silence fell across the room. Every alien dignitary, every station official, every reporter who had managed to sneak in, all eyes focused on the massive dragon and the human janitor standing before him. "By the ancient laws of the Draconian Empire," Volcranos announced, his voice carrying through the entire hall, "I hereby declare a life debt to Marcus Webb of Earth. His actions have preserved the imperial bloodline and saved my grandson's life. From this day forward, he is under protection of the Empire, and his honor is our honor." The alien dignitaries erupted in shocked conversations. Marcus saw the human representatives in the crowd whispering urgently to each other, their eyes gleaming with calculations. He didn't like those looks. One of the human diplomats, a woman in an expensive suit, pushed forward. "Your Imperial Majesty, on behalf of Earth's government, we are honored by your gratitude. Perhaps we could discuss how this life debt might benefit relations between our peoples? Trade agreements, technology sharing, mutual defense treaties." "No," Marcus said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at him. "I'm sorry, but no. This isn't about politics or trade deals. The diplomat's face went red. Mr. Webb, you have no authority to... He has every authority, Volcranos interrupted, his tone icy. The life debt is owed to him, not to your government. He alone decides how it is honored. The Emperor turned to Marcus. You have the right to ask anything of me, human, wealth beyond imagination, territory, a seat of power in the galaxy. Name your desire, and if it is within my power, it shall be yours. Marcus looked down at Ashkren, who gazed up at him with trusting eyes. The little dragon had fallen asleep the night before curled against his leg, feeling safe the first time since being kidnapped. That simple trust meant more to Marcus than all the wealth in the universe. I don't want money or power, Marcus said quietly. I'm just a janitor. I wouldn't know what to do with any of that. He paused, thinking carefully. But if I could ask for one thing, could I visit Ashkren sometime to make sure he's okay? I know that sounds silly, but I've gotten kind of attached to the little guy. The hall went completely silent. Even the whispers stopped. Every being in the room stared at Marcus like he had grown a second head. The human diplomat looked like she might faint. Mr. Webb, you have the chance to ask for anything, and you're asking to visit a... My grandson seems to have grown attached to you as well, Volcrano said, and there was something warm in his voice now, something almost like approval. He studied Marcus for a long moment. You are an unusual human, Marcus Webb. Most beings would have asked for riches or power, but you ask only to see a child you cared for. This tells me much about your character. The Emperor began to pace, his massive form moving with surprising grace. For centuries, my people have been isolated from the rest of the galaxy. We are feared, respected, but never trusted. We have few allies and many who wish us harm, as my grandson's kidnapping proves. He stopped and looked at Marcus. We are seen as monsters, and perhaps we have become monsters in our isolation. Ashkren chirped and nuzzled Marcus's hand, and Volcranos smiled at the sight. But you did not see a monster when you found my grandson. You saw a child in pain. You saw someone who needed help. The Emperor's golden eyes blazed with intensity. I have a different proposal for you, Marcus Webb. I do not simply wish to grant you visitation rights. I wish to offer you a position in my court. Marcus blinked. A position? But I'm just a... You would become the cultural ambassador and guardian to Prince Ashkren, Volcranos continued. You would live on our homeworld, help raise my grandson, and serve as a bridge between your people and mine. You would teach him about humanity's compassion and help him become an emperor who understands the value of all life, not just draconian life. The hall erupted in noise. Some aliens cheered, others protested, and the human diplomats looked torn between excitement and outrage. Marcus stood frozen, his mind racing. Leave the station? Leave the only life he had known for 8 years? Go live on an alien world, among dragons who could incinerate him with a thought? Become a guardian to royalty when he had never even finished college? It was insane. It was terrifying. It was impossible. But then Ashkren looked up at him and made that soft chirping sound, the same sound he had made when Marcus first fed him. The little dragon's eyes held such trust, such hope. Marcus remembered how it felt to find purpose in saving one small life. Marcus started, then stopped. This is a lot to take in. I'm nobody special. I clean floors for a living. Why would you trust me with something so important? Volcranos knelt down, so his eyes were level with Marcus's. Because you are exactly the kind of person who should be trusted with important things. You do not seek power. You do not act for reward. You simply do what is right, even when it costs you. That is the rarest quality in the universe. Marcus Webb. The Emperor stood and extended his massive clawed hand. I offer you 3 days to decide. Think carefully. This choice will change your life forever. Marcus looked at that hand, then at Ashkren, then at the crowd of aliens watching him with fascination. His old life as a janitor suddenly felt very small and very far away. I'll give you my answer in 3 days, Marcus said, shaking the Emperor's hand. The scales felt warm and surprisingly smooth. As the crowd dispersed and the officials began making arrangements, Marcus sat down on the floor. Ashkren immediately climbed into his lap and fell asleep, purring like a motorboat. Marcus stroked the little dragon's head and wondered if he had the courage to accept the biggest opportunity of his life. 3 days passed faster than Marcus expected. He spent most of that time thinking, pacing his small quarters, and visiting Ashkren in the medical bay where draconian healers were treating his injuries. Every time Marcus arrived, the little dragon would light up and rush to him, chirping happily. That made the decision both easier and harder. On the final morning, Marcus stood in his quarters one last time, looking at the simple room that had been his home for 8 years. A bed, a desk, a small window showing stars. It wasn't much, but it had been his. Safe, predictable, comfortable. His friend Chun, another janitor who worked the morning shift, leaned against the doorframe. "So, what are you going to tell the giant, scary dragon emperor?" Marcus smiled weakly. "I think I'm going to say yes." "You're insane," Chin said, but he was grinning. "But you've always been insane. Remember when you rescued that Vrelian ambassador's pet from the air ducts? Or when you talked down that drunk Korthian who was threatening everyone with a plasma cutter?" He shook his head. "You've never been good at just keeping your head down and staying safe." "Is that a bad thing?" Marcus asked. "No," Chin said seriously. "It's what makes you you. And honestly, Marcus, you've been sleepwalking through life for years. This is your chance to actually live, to matter. Don't let fear stop you." They hugged goodbye, and Chin left. Marcus picked up his small bag. He didn't know much worth taking, and headed to the docking bay. The grand hall was packed again. Emperor Volcrano sat on his throne with Ashkren perched on the armrest, his wing now properly healed, and his scales shining bright copper. The little dragon saw Marcus enter and immediately flew down to him, circling his head excitedly. "Hello, troublemaker," Marcus said, laughing as Ashkren landed on his shoulder. The dragon was already bigger than 3 days ago, growing at an incredible rate. Volcrano stood, and the room fell silent. "Marcus Webb of Earth, have you made your decision?" Marcus walked forward until he stood before the Emperor. His heart pounded in his chest, but his voice was steady. "I have, Your Majesty. I accept your offer. I'll become Ashkren's guardian and your cultural ambassador." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Some of the human diplomats looked pleased, probably already planning how to use this connection. But Marcus didn't care about their politics. He had made this choice for himself and for the little dragon nuzzling his cheek. "Then it is decided," Volcrano said, and he actually smiled, a terrifying sight with all those teeth, but genuine. "Welcome to the Draconian Empire, Marcus Webb. From this day forward, you are under my protection, and you carry the authority of the Imperial household." 2 hours later, Marcus found himself aboard the massive Imperial warship, watching Nexus. 7 grows smaller through the viewport. Ashkren sat in his lap, happily eating pieces of meat from a bowl. The little dragon had barely left his side since he boarded. Volcranos entered the observation deck and stood beside Marcus. Without his formal armor, the Emperor looked slightly less intimidating. Only slightly. "Are you frightened?" Volcranos asked. Terrified, Marcus admitted, "I don't know anything about being an ambassador or raising a prince. I'm going to mess this up." "Perhaps," the Emperor said thoughtfully, "but you will do so with good intentions and a pure heart. That is more than most can claim." He looked out at the stars. "Can I tell you something, Marcus? My people have been isolated for so long that we have forgotten how to trust. We see threats everywhere. We strike first and ask questions later. It has made us powerful, but it has also made us lonely." Ashkren chirped and climbed up to Marcus's shoulder, wrapping his tail around his neck like a scarf. "My grandson will one day rule an empire," Volcranos continued. "But I do not want him to rule alone in the darkness, surrounded only by fear and weapons. I want him to know that there is kindness in the universe, that not every stranger is an enemy, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is show compassion." He turned to Marcus. "You showed him that when you saved his life. Now I ask you to keep showing him every day, so he never forgets." Marcus felt the weight of that responsibility settle on his shoulders, along with the weight of one small dragon. I'll do my best. That is all anyone can ask. The ship jumped to hyperspace, and the stars stretched into lines of light. Marcus watched the universe blur past, thinking about the journey ahead. In a few days, they would reach Draconis Prime, the dragon homeworld. He would see floating mountains and crystal cities. He would meet Draconian nobles and warriors who might not trust him. He would face challenges he couldn't even imagine yet. But for now, Marcus just sat in a quiet observation deck, with Ashkren purring on his shoulder and the Emperor standing beside him like a guardian. "Thank you," Volcrano said suddenly, "for saving him, for accepting this role, for giving an old Emperor hope that his empire might become something better." Marcus reached up and scratched under Ashkren's chin, and the little dragon purred louder. "I spent 45 years cleaning up after people, making sure things worked smoothly in the background. I never thought my life mattered much." He looked at the Emperor. "But maybe the small acts, feeding someone who's hungry, helping someone who's hurt, maybe those are what really matter." Volcranos' expression softened in a way that made him look less like a fearsome emperor and more like a grandfather. "In saving one small dragon, you may have saved 2 civilizations from eternal mistrust. Never doubt that even the smallest act of kindness can change the galaxy." As they traveled through hyperspace toward Draconis Prime, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years: excitement for the future. His new chapter was just beginning. He wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was a bridge between worlds, a guardian to a prince, and living proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or weapons. It was the simple courage to show compassion when it mattered most. Ashkren yawned, showing tiny sharp teeth, and curled up against Marcus's neck. The little dragon fell asleep feeling safe and loved, and Marcus smiled. Maybe he could do this after all. The stars streaked past, carrying him toward a new home, a new purpose, and a future that promised to be anything but ordinary. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Webb was ready to be extraordinary, not through power or glory, but through the quiet strength of a kind heart.